A few years ago, we went on a Mediterranean cruise, and it didn't take me long before I realized we had made some pretty big mistakes. And had we done things just a little bit differently, I realized that we would have had probably a much better cruise experience. Hi there, I'm Ilana from the website lifewellcruise.com. Welcome back to my channel. Now, a few years ago, my family went on a Mediterranean cruise. It truly was one of the very best cruises that we ever did. And while we did some things right, we did a lot of things wrong. We really did make some cruise mistakes. And let's face it, for us, our Mediterranean cruise, well, this was the first time we were really in this region by cruise ship. And typically we had gone on a lot of Caribbean cruises and even some Bermuda cruises, and Europe is really quite different. So if you're planning a Mediterranean cruise, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the actually six cruise mistakes that we made on this cruise. As I went through my list, I realized there were actually six. But I'm also going to share with you one thing that we really did right that I highly recommend. Now, before I get started, I did want to mention that if you like this video, if you find it helpful, informative, or enjoyable in any way, then please do give the video a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And of course, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing that we did wrong was we flew in one day before our cruise. Now I know what you're thinking. Isn't that the advice that we always hear? Fly in one day before your cruise. Yes, and typically I do say fly in one day before your cruise. But when you are going from North America in particular and you're going to Europe, you want to do 2 days before your cruise at a minimum. You could even do 3 days because let's face it, you want to explore more, you want to visit that destination port a little bit longer. But by flying in just 1 day before, we found, first of all, we were exhausted. There is the time difference. There's the jet lag. We were also getting acclimated to a completely new city. We came into Barcelona, amazing city, and we were generally so tired and so off on that very first day that we did arrive to Barcelona after our flight. So by the time we did start our cruise the next day, at least the good thing was we weren't tired for our cruise. But had we arrived 2 days before, we would have really had more time to explore Barcelona, be less tired, and really, I think it is good advice. Take 2 days before your cruise, especially if you're going on a Mediterranean cruise for the first time. Number two, we made the mistake of thinking that because we were visiting pretty popular tourist destinations that everybody would speak English and we would really have no need to learn a little bit of the local languages. And I just think when I look back, I think, well, that was really kind of naive, maybe a little bit ignorant on my part. What I really should have done is learned at least a few common phrases for each of the different destinations that we were at. Something that you can do as well is you can download an app. I'll see if I can find a good one and I'll leave it on, I'll screenshot it on the screen. I think it really is helpful. And something that we did notice is while we were always able to be understood, like in a taxi cab or even in a restaurant, if we did go a few streets away from any of the main part of the tourist area in any of the different cities that we went to, even in some place like Rome, for instance, just by going a few streets away, people didn't necessarily speak as much English as we thought. And I just think it goes a little bit of a way to show a little bit of respect to the local population, to the local people, when you do speak or try to speak a little bit of their language. Now, we definitely noticed this because when we were in France, we went into a boulangerie and we ordered some croissants, and I think it was a pastry called the Saint-Pierre. Anyway, it was so good. And we speak French as a second language, and we were able to speak with the people who worked in the shops in French, and you could see the way they interacted with us. It was really pleasant. So I do think if you could learn a little bit of the language or at least get a few common phrases, it does go a long way. Number three, not taking advantage of the hop-on, hop-off buses in many of the different destinations that we were in. Now, what we did before our cruise is we mostly booked all cruise line excursions, with the exception of one. We did a private excursion in Ephesus and Kusadasi that was only half a day. I had really researched this quite well, and I did know somebody who had taken this tour with this company and it had gone really well. So we did book that one privately, a very good decision. The rest of them we really booked with the cruise line. And while this was a good decision in terms of getting back to the ship on time, there were definitely some ports that we could have explored with the hop-on, hop-off buses. We could have just timed our day to make sure that we did get back to the cruise port on time. But not only would this have saved money, but more importantly, we wouldn't have been maybe grouped with 50 to 100 other people, which in some cases we did find that it was hard to hear the guide during our excursions, and we kind of regretted not researching this a little bit more. Number 4, expecting that the shops and even the restaurants would be open all day. Now, what I mean is when we went into some of the different towns, well, the shops did close down oftentimes between like 1:30 and 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, while I had heard about this ahead of time, I just didn't think this would be in the actual cruise ports. But this really did happen. We were walking in Salerno in Italy in the afternoon. We had done a Pompeii excursion in the morning time. And as we were walking, the shops were just closing their gates, like their doors, right in front of us. There were very few restaurants open. We were really just surprised, but it really is a different culture, especially if you're used to like the United States and customer service. It really is different when you are in a lot of those Mediterranean cruise ports. Number 5, choosing the early dining or the early seating. Now, this was definitely a mistake for us given our cruise ports and the fact that many times we had excursions that were between like 8 and 10 hours for the day. So we would get back on the cruise ship maybe at 5 or even sometimes close to 6. And our dinner time, I believe in the Mediterranean, it was at 6:30 p.m. So we were really rushing to go to dinner. And oftentimes we weren't even really that hungry at that time. So it would have been better in hindsight that we had booked maybe the late dining at maybe 8:30 p.m. or 8 o'clock p.m. And in the case of open dining, which is available on so many cruise ships now, I think even booking something that's after 7:30 or 8 p.m., obviously depending on you and when you like to eat, but this really would have been something that would have been better for us. Now, I am going to tell you the one thing that we did really, really right in just a minute. But first, this is number 6. This is kind of my bonus tip. Be very careful when you are booking cruise line excursions. When you look at the description of it, if you see things like a Turkish rug demonstration, if you see other things like a perfume factory tour, if that's part of the excursion, sometimes you are spending a lot of time in those places, in that demonstration, let's say. And while it starts off as being a little bit interesting, after about 45 minutes, it turns into a sales pitch. And what we found is when we had a shore excursion that was, let's say, 4 to maybe 5 hours, that we maybe spent an hour and a half or longer in that demonstration or in that tour. And it's definitely something that if we could do again, I would definitely avoid any of those type of excursions. Now, if you're not sure about it, you can actually speak to the people who work on the ship at the shore excursion desk, and you can get a little bit of feedback and find out about that. It is something to watch out for. Now, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, even though we made some cruise mistakes, we definitely did some things right. And one of the things that we did that I highly recommend you do, and I definitely will do again when we go on another Mediterranean cruise in a different region, is to eat when you are in your destination. So definitely save money in your budget. Plan even the time to sit down at one of the local restaurants. The food is so good at all of the different destinations we were in, by the way. So whether it was Santorini, whether it was Athens, whether it was Florence, oh my gosh, the food, whether it was Cannes, we really had such good food. You can also sit down, have a glass of wine, just really enjoy that local food, enjoy the ambiance. It is definitely not a time waster to sit down for an hour or even a little bit more to enjoy that. And it's definitely not a waste of money either. And something really fun to do is try the gelato basically anywhere you are. It is so good. So have gelato as an afternoon snack. Have the coffee that is there. The European coffee is so good, especially if you're coming from North America. It really is so different, and it absolutely is part of the experience in a Mediterranean cruise. Now, as I was going through this list and kind of reminiscing on my cruise, I realized I also have some really great tips to share. So if you're going on a Mediterranean cruise and you'd like to hear these tips from a bit of a North American perspective, then please let me know in the comments below. And if you've been on a Mediterranean cruise, please leave your tips, your mistakes, please leave it in the comments below as well. Now, I'm going to leave a video right after this one all about first-time cruise mistakes and do's and don'ts. If you are a first-time cruiser, make sure that you do watch that video next. Now, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please do give it a big thumbs up. I really do appreciate it. And of course, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Bye for now, and happy cruising.